49ers versus Cardinals in a huge divisional matchup. 49ers have lost a game this year in the division already. Arizona Cardinals are coming off a big loss against the Washington Commanders, and San Francisco needs to continue to win. So this is a 49ers versus Cardinals first look. We're going to look at each team, what they're dealing with, and how they expect to go about battling each other in this huge divisional matchup. All that and more in this episode of 49ers Cutback.
From the alley-oops at Keysar to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. And the 49ers are welcoming Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals to Santa Clara for a huge divisional matchup. And the Cardinals have been scoring points at a high level this season. They've been pushing teams to the breaking point, and they probably should have more victories than they do. They come into this game at 1-3. The San Francisco 49ers come into this game at 2-2. Now, the 49ers suffered a huge loss to the Rams a week after the Cardinals got a big victory against the Rams. So it's a interesting dynamic. And of course, these games are determined by key matchups. And so each team just matches up differently with the other. But we want to take a first look and look at how Arizona attacks, what they do on offense, what they do on defense, and also who's going to be playing in this game for both squads. 49ers dealing with a few injuries on offense and defense. The Arizona Cardinals are still dealing with some injuries. They've lost a few players through the stretch, even though they might be getting some guys back. Same with the 49ers. So it's always an interesting thing to see week to week who's going to be on the roster and who's going to be playing, but ultimately who's going to match up. You got Kyle Shanahan. You got Jonathan Gannon. Jonathan Gannon has done a good job in trying to rebuild the Arizona Cardinals team, even though it's not really materializing into wins right now. At what point do they start getting a little nervous in Arizona? He's only in year 2, so we'll see. We do know that they always play hard. They have some key all-pros, guys like Budda Baker, that can make some plays. But we're going to go inside out this roster, look at the Cardinals, look at the 49ers, look at some of the trends of how each of these teams are playing. It's going to be a fun one. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. If you're listening on audio platform, it's 49ers Cutback on Believe Network. Thank you guys so much for listening. Please give it a 5-star rating. And if you're going to bet with Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. Bet Online is every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. You think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for a chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet Online, the game starts here. And so I went through and I wanted to kind of look at what both teams are doing. And we know when you watch the Arizona Cardinals and some of the things that they've been able to do successfully over the last couple of years, it starts with James Conner and that run game. And the Arizona Cardinals have relied on the run game pretty extensively so far through 2024. You kind of speed back to last year when the 49ers met the Arizona Cardinals towards the end of the season, and James Conner and that Arizona running game absolutely diced up the 49ers defense. 49ers defense was leaking oil, and of course, it was proven all throughout the end of the season and into the playoffs that they were going to struggle to stop the run. And the Cardinals were kind of the ones that really got the ball rolling on that. And Conner has always ran well against the 49ers, and it makes sense. Number one, he's a very decisive, very physical style of runner, a downhill style guy with enough speed. If he needs to run to the outside, he can. but also you've got a dynamic quarterback that can use his legs in Kyler Murray. That makes it a little bit harder for you as a defense. Sometimes as an end, you have to freeze and you can't crash down the line and get onto James Conner. That added element to the Arizona Cardinals offense can sometimes make it more difficult for particular defenses, especially defenses that don't have as much speed as the Arizona Cardinals offense. At times that can happen to the 49ers. So this is going to be an interesting matchup between James Conner and the Arizona Cardinals running game against the San Francisco 49ers run defense. Now, the run defense has showed up in 2 of the 4 weeks this season. Week 1, they showed up and held Breece Hall and the Jets running backs to 68 yards on the ground. And then last week against the New England Patriots, a good Patriots run offense that was averaging 144 yards per game held them to 73 and held Stevenson under 50 yards rushing. So that was a good showing for the 49ers, and they used some unique looks to help slow down the running game for the New England Patriots. Now, you put that on film, which means the Arizona Cardinals can be capable of learning from what you were trying to do and go ahead and counteract what you're going to do on defense. But James Conner has been really good this year, but the Arizona Cardinals are averaging 153 yards per game on the ground right now. That is really fantastic. If you could tell me that 49ers could average 153 yards per game, you'd sign up for it every day. Now, the 49ers are averaging 140 yards a game, and they're doing a fantastic job with Jordan Mason running the football. That's going to be an element we talk about as well. But the fact that the Cardinals are so successful with the running game is one of the keys to being able to beat them. If you can slow down James Conner and this running game, you can slow down their offense. Their offense is high-powered, but they're not throwing for 200 yards a game through the air. They're averaging about 177 yards per game through the air with Kyler Murray and some really talented weapons when you look at Marvin Harrison and the rest of this wide receiver room. Now, of course, Zay Jones is suspended, so we'll wait and see when that guy comes back this season. But you got James Conner. He's a weapon on the ground. You got Marvin Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson, who gave the 49ers some fits last year early in the season with a couple of touchdowns, and then the speedster, Greg Dortch. Behind them, you got Zach Pascal as well. So you've got some talented wide receivers. I say that you got the big bodies with Harrison and Wilson. I think that that works really well for what Charvarius Ward wants to do. Deommodore Lenoir, he's not worried about physicality either. I think Dortch's speed could be something the 49ers need to watch. Lenoir should be able to hang with him for the most part, but I think you got to watch the slot fade. I think that is going to be something that the Arizona Cardinals are going to try to get a look to get Dortch in the slot, running a fade pattern against Deommodore Lenoir. That could be a little bit of an advantage. That's tough for any nickel corner, not just Deommodore Lenoir, especially with a speedster like Greg Dortch. Now, last week, tight end Trey McBride did not play, dealing with a concussion. So we will see how Trey McBride progresses and see if he's going to be capable of playing against the 49ers. I expect he will clear concussion protocol, and I hope he can, because I feel terrible about guys who suffer head injuries like that. But Trey McBride is one of the better tight ends in the entire league, and I think he's really been playing well. And they're willing to play 2 tight end sets with Elijah Higgins and Tip Ryman, the young rookie. So they will put 12 personnel out there. In fact, they ran a lot of 12 personnel early in the game last week against the Washington Commanders. And what's 12 personnel? Well, that's 1 running back and 2 tight ends. And that has been a favorite for most teams this year going against the 49ers, loading up with 12 personnel, getting 2 tight ends, getting the 49ers in their base 4-3, and then running at Demetrius Flanagan fouls and trying to take advantage of him in the run game. So what do the 49ers do to counteract that? Well, last week, Dan Quinn and the Washington Commanders, after about a drive and a half, he put 5 defensive linemen in there and absolutely stymied James Conner for a little while. That worked. When they were in 12 personnel, boom, that's where they went to. He would even bring Bobby Wagner on a run blitz, bring 6 guys, and they were slowing down the Arizona Cardinals running game. When that happened, it stifled the offense. So I think the 49ers can take note of that. And I think they're going to want to bring those 5 defensive linemen in when you see 12 personnel. Here's where it gets a little bit more difficult. The Commanders, they didn't have to worry about Trey McBride. the 49ers will. So if you're going to sell out and bring out the extra defensive linemen to stop the run, you've got to account for Trey McBride in the passing game. Play action pass could be a little bit of an issue. So that's just one thing to monitor. But it is very important for the 49ers to slow up James Conner in the running game. And so putting an emphasis with 5 defensive linemen after watching what Dan Quinn did last week, it makes too much sense for the 49ers to not do that. And so I think that's going to be one of the key elements. Now, of course, like any smart offensive coordinator, Arizona switched it up and started running out of more spread sets, more 11 personnel, getting smaller personnel for the defense out there and taking advantage of your big-bodied wide receivers. We talked about how big Michael Wilson is, and he's a good blocker. So they were able to take advantage of that a little bit and got a little bit more going against the Commanders. But overall, it did slow up the offense for Arizona. And I'm sure that's what Nick Sorensen and the 49ers defense is going to want to do. Now, you look at some of the things that they're dealing with this year. They don't have Jonah Williams. He's dealing with an injury. He's on IR. That means Kelvin Beachum is going to be starting at right tackle. And I've seen the Commanders be able to get home a little bit against Beachum. When you look at the Arizona Cardinals, they run a lot of 5-man protections because they like to empty out the backfield and go 5 wide receivers. When that happens, you're going to get Kelvin Beachum potentially one-on-one with Nick Bosa. I think that could be an interesting matchup. I think they'd feel a lot better if that was going to be Jonah Wilson. Now, when you look at the inside of their offensive line, it's not bad. Will Hernandez, Froll Hoyt, the center, and Evan Brown, the guard, is pretty decent. And then you got Paris Johnson, the young guy at left tackle. I expect to see him get challenged a little bit in this game as well. Leonard Floyd, Nick Bosa, kind of rotating on him and see what they do. And then another matchup that should be a lot of fun. Evan Brown on the inside against Etor Gross-Matos on obvious pass downs. And Will Hernandez against Malik Collins. Could be some real showdowns. Now, they could also be getting back another backup offensive lineman in Christian Jones. He's been on the IR, and he could come back this week. We'll see. They open his practice window and see what he can do. So he potentially could be coming back, and that would be a huge boost. They have really no backup offensive tackles right now. They are hurting when it comes to the offensive line position with the injuries to Carter O'Donnell, Jonah Williams, and also with Christian Jones. So they're really hoping that Christian Jones is going to be coming back, and that would be huge for their football team. Now, for the 49ers, when it comes to injuries, they just signed Jalen Graham yesterday. Jalen Graham is coming off the Washington Commanders practice squad. Of course, he spent all of training camp in the preseason with the 49ers. That's a plug and play. He's a part of the active 53-man roster. And they had an open roster spot from Curtis Robinson going on IR last week. So that doesn't mean that Fred Warner's not going to play in this football game. We'll get an update in just a little while about if Fred is going to practice on Wednesday. So if you watch this before the practice, we might not know yet. But you've got key players that are day-to-day. Guys like Fred Warner, he's going to be day-to-day. And Jordan Elliott, who was really big in that game, did the film breakdown on Patreon. Jordan Elliott in that first half was fantastic. He's day-to-day. Kyle Juszczyk, day-to-day. Jacob Cowing, day-to-day. Talanoa Hufanga, day-to-day. There's just so many players for the 49ers that are on the fringe of are they going to play or are they not? And so the makeup of this game could change drastically with one of these players being out. Kyle Juszczyk being out, all of a sudden you're running a ton of 11 personnel against the Arizona Cardinals. That changes your game plan. Jordan Elliott being out, all of a sudden it's tougher to run your 5 defensive line looks because he was so good playing the nose tackle and playing the zero technique and driving that center back. Him versus Froholtz could be a lot of fun for the 49ers in this game if he's healthy. So that changes some things. At linebacker, it definitely changes if Fred's not there. All of a sudden, you've got Flanagan Fowles at your Mike linebacker. D. Winters coming in on 4-3 sets. But that's when you know 49ers will have to run more 5 defensive line looks. So it gets a little bit more complicated with every single injury. And I'm sure the 49ers are hoping they're going to have key guys like Fred Warner, Talanoa Hufanga, Jordan Elliott, and Kyle Juszczyk capable of playing. And I think right now it looks like there's a possibility, but we'll see how this week continues to go and if they're going to be capable and ready to play in this matchup. Now, the Arizona Cardinals, they can score points with the best of them. They're averaging over 24 points per game. And so they are hyper successful in getting in the end zone. Offense is not the problem for the Arizona Cardinals. It's defense. That's where they're really struggling. The Cards give up 150 or 146 yards per game on the ground. A 49er team coming in that averages over 140 yards per game on the ground. This is a battle of run games. And if you can run the ball successfully in this game, you can take control of the time of possession. You can really keep the opposing offense off the field, and you can wear down the defense. When you get to the fourth quarter, that's going to be huge in this matchup. So 49ers are going to be looking to get the ball to Jordan Mason, looking to run the football consistently against Arizona's defense. And the Arizona Cardinals are going to try to slow up this 49ers run offense. But how do you do it? You look at the Arizona Cardinals defense, and they could be getting a big help here. Young rookie Darius Robinson has been on the IR. They're expected to open his practice window, so he could be coming back. 49er fans were very fond of him when coming out of the draft out of Missouri. Big defensive end, that plays close to 300 pounds. The dude's a big guy. So he could be available for them this week, and they need that help. You look at the edge for them, and they got Zaven Collins playing defensive end. And Zaven Collins was a interior linebacker, a stack linebacker coming out of college, and now he's playing an edge defender in his second year on the edge. To me, he's done a pretty good job, but you can still take advantage of him when running the football. He doesn't always keep the edge as well as he should, and I think that's an area the 49ers might try to attack. And you look at their linebacker room, and Kaiser White, I have a lot of respect for Kaiser White, what he was able to do in his time in Philadelphia. And, of course, he comes over with Jonathan Gannon last year, and he's very athletic. He's one of those guys that can cover a running back in space, but I think he's somebody that you can run at when you're talking about a power run game. So I think the 49ers look at the linebacker room for the Arizona Cardinals with Mack Wilson and Kaiser White as a opportunity to be able to go at him. Now, Dennis Kardec, the outside linebacker that plays out opposite of Zaven Collins, hyperactive. And, he's a guy that get in there and get sacks. He flies around and makes tackles. But what he isn't is big, and he isn't physical. So if you're looking at a weakness for this Arizona Cardinals defense, the edge defenders definitely are in the run game. If you can get those guys moving, and the 49ers like to use tight ends, use a tight end and wide receiver, tight end and running back combination to get movement on those edge guys, you could create some real holes in the run game for Jordan Mason. So I think that's what the 49ers want to do. And you look at those guys, like I said, lots of respect for Kaiser White. I have respect for Dennis Kardec, but I think that some of the advantages the 49ers are going to have is getting those big bodies onto those guys. Now, one thing to watch in this matchup, though, Aaron Banks has been struggling, the 49ers left guard, to consistently make run blocks in the run game, and he's also struggled with quicker defensive tackles as far as pass protection. And in this game, he's going to go against Roy Lopez and Dante Stills, and both of those guys with stunts, some lateral quickness, could give the 49ers and Aaron Banks a little bit of problems. Now, I don't worry about our rookie, Dominic Pooney. I think Dominic Pooney is going to play really good when it comes to pass protection. Should match up pretty well when it comes to run blocking as well this week. So I like Pooney in this matchup. We'll see how he does. I also like Jake Brendel in this matchup, where I don't think that they have somebody that's just going to completely overpower him every single play. So I kind of like that for what we're going to get from him. He'll be able to use his athleticism and his speed, and that's why my concern turns to Aaron Banks, the least athletic of the 5 offensive linemen for the San Francisco 49ers, but also one of the biggest. If you want a guy that can anchor, he can definitely handle that role. So that's going to be something interesting. Now, you look at their cornerback room, and this is another spot where you find real weakness. Now, Sean Murphy-Bunting, he is well-respected. He's been around this league for a long time. But you look on the other side, and it's Starling Thomas, the 5th. And I think that's advantage 49ers in a big way. You look at the nickel corner, Garrett Wilson, advantage 49ers in a big way. And so when you look at the 49ers wide receiver room with Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Jawan Jennings, not Kyle Juszczyk. He's a matchup problem for other people. But you see those 3 guys, there's advantages for the 49ers. I think the 49ers like their wide receivers in this matchup against all three of those corners for the Arizona Cardinals. And so I like that matchup overall. The 49ers being able to go 11 personnel, run the ball when they want to out of 11, which is 3 wide receivers. That's 1 running back, 1 tight end. I think they could take advantage of that set running the ball, but I also think they can throw in those sets too. And so I do think the 49ers will spread them out a little bit in this matchup. Now, you look at the safety position. Budda Baker is one of the best safeties in the league. He's been one of the best in the division for a long time. He's absolutely spectacular. He's probably going to lock horns with George Kittle again, and that's going to be a brilliant matchup. And we'll see how Arizona goes about using Budda Baker in this one. Kittle's gotten Budda before. Budda's gotten him. It's just been a back and forth conflict. But I like Budda Baker. His ability to tackle his space is really good. He's a good cover guy, one of the most well-respected in the league, and I think he's their best defensive player, and it's not close. You look at his running mate, it's Jalen Thompson, and Jalen Thompson does a good job. This is one of the best tandems, especially in the NFC West. They do a really good job. Now, Jalen Thompson didn't tackle as well last week as I'd like him to. When you're looking at guys who need to play well, he didn't tackle well last week and allowed Washington to have some extra yards. So he's got to be a little bit better with that. If not, 49ers are Jordan Mason, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle. Those guys aren't easy to tackle in space, and that could be a real problem for them. So as you're looking at their defense, you can see the edge defenders, the linebackers, and the corners seem to be real problems. Now, the inside guys for them, defensive linemen, they're quick. They move. If you're going to stunts, they do a pretty good job. But that's why the 49ers believe they can run the football on the Arizona Cardinals. You look at some of the strengths that the Niners have, good blocking on the edge with George Kittle, with Kyle Juszczyk. That's advantage 49ers. You look on the inside, getting to linebackers, you have the athleticism with your offensive line to be able to do that. You still have the best left tackle in football, and you have a power back in Jordan Mason that's running behind Kyle Juszczyk. That's always a good sign. So when you're looking at that, it's definitely good for the 49ers. Now, the defense for the Cardinals is so bad they're allowing 26 points per game. That's not good winning football for the Cardinals, and that's not good when you have a defensive-minded head coach. And I think a lot of it plays into the fact they just haven't got the talent they need yet to turn this thing completely around. They're not a bad football team. They're a talented football team, especially on offense. But I think defense, they lack some of the talent right now that they need. They've got key contributors at certain positions like All-Pro, Budda Baker, right? You've got Kaiser White, who they feel comfortable and confident about. But other than that, you don't have a superstar at cornerback. You don't have a superstar along the defensive line as far as pass rush. They're hoping Darius Robinson can be that guy. But right now, they have limitations to what they can do. Now, one thing I noticed on film, and Brock Purdy's been seeing this a ton over the last couple of weeks, especially against the Rams, is teams are willing to drop 8. And that is something Jonathan Gannon did a ton last week against the Commanders. He would rush 3 and drop 8. So I expect Brock Purdy to have to navigate through that and have to go through and find open receivers. And I think that's why it's going to be key for the 49ers to stay ahead of the sticks. You want to, play drop 8 on 3rd and 4. Well, I can find a quick hole in the zone and be able to get the ball out. And so I think that's going to be one of the keys in this game as well, is knowing when you're going to get what from the opposing team. And for Kyle Shanahan, it's all about what am I getting from Jonathan Gannon in certain looks, in certain sets. And he's going to have to try to figure that out. He had a good feel for it when Gannon was with the Philadelphia Eagles, and we'll see if that happens with Arizona. We'll say the Arizona roster, not as talented as that Philadelphia Eagles roster that the 49ers faced in 2022. That is for sure. So it's going to be a little bit less difficult for the 49ers to figure out, but I expect for them to figure it out. So let's talk about the starting lineups going into this game. We fully expect for Kyler Murray, of course, he's going to be the starting quarterback. James Conner will be the starting running back, even though we will see DeMarcado, and DeMarcado had an explosive touchdown against the 49ers last year. So expect to see those guys. At wide receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson, and Greg Dortch when they are in 11 personnel. And I expect to see some 12 personnel. And I expect Trey McBride to be back when they're in 12 personnel. Trey McBride and Elijah Higgins will handle the tight end role, and they'll be out there blocking and trying to win against Nick Bosa and those edge defenders. And Bosa and Floyd are going to have to hold up. And even more so, Sam Okuwanu and Yetur Gross-Matos are going to have to hold up on the edge in this matchup. Now, some of the matchups on the inside, of course, you got left tackle Paris Johnson. He's going to be starting. Well, on his side is running mate Evan Brown. They're going to be going against a lot of Malik Collins and a lot of Nick Bosa in this game, even though they will see Floyd as well. Froholt in the middle. I like to see the Jordan Elliott matchup. If Jordan Elliott's healthy, I think he will be able to go in this game. At least I'm hoping. So that'll be interesting. Will Hernandez and Kelvin Beachum will round out the offensive line with Hernandez at guard and Beachum at right tackle. So they are missing Jonah Williams. On defense, they're going to have Zaven Collins at defensive end to go with Bilal Nichols, Roy Lopez at defensive tackle, and Dante Stills. A lot of people liked him out of West Virginia, and he's going to be playing right defensive end. Their linebackers, interior linebackers, are Mac Wilson and Kaiser White. And then Dennis Kardec is their Sam linebacker, but he plays along the line of scrimmage a ton, and that's where you can expect to see him some. But he will come in pressure. He will drop off. You will just see a lot of him moving around, and you'll be able to tell who he has: long, blonde, flowing hair on the field. At left cornerback, it'll be Sean Murphy Bunting, and it'll be Starling Thomas at right corner. The nickel will be Garrett Wilson. And then, of course, the safeties, Jalen Thompson and Budda Baker, one of the strengths of this football team. So a talented group for them. And for the 49ers, it's all going to be about who's healthy. We know Brock's going to be playing, and Jordan Mason and George Kittle, who finished out that game. You've got your starting offensive line. That's great news. And so they're sitting pretty comfortable. It's just, what are you going to get on defense from some of the injuries that you've been facing? That's going to be one of the key elements in this football game. Can Jordan Elliott go? If he can, you feel good about your interior defensive line. Will Kalia Davis be active? Will they open his practice window? I expect them to today. Open his practice window and him start practicing, but will he be ready to go for Cardinals, or will that be a wait until Seattle? If they're waiting till Seattle, we might see Evan Anderson elevated again for a second week. This will be another week to use a big defensive tackle to be able to kind of plug the run game. So those are some of the decisions you have to make along the defensive line. I still expect to see on obvious pass downs, or in situations where you go 11 personnel for the Arizona Cardinals, for the 49ers to go with Yetur Gross-Matos rushing in that Arden Key role on the inside. I like that look a lot last week, and I think we're going to see more of it. It gives the 49ers some more flexibility and freedom to be able to do some other things within this defense, and that's what it's all about, versatility and flexibility, and that's what that affords you having Yetur Gross-Matos. Plus, he's just a good interior pass rusher to go along with Malik Collins. And then you look at the linebackers. Fred Warner, if he plays, that's going to be huge. I worry about the San Francisco 49ers defense stopping the run of James Conner without Fred Warner. He is just special. And if Fred wasn't going to play and we had Dre Greenlaw, I would say, okay, we can get by with Dre for a couple of games. But without Fred and without Dre, I'm really concerned about a linebacker room that could have Devondre Campbell, who I think has been just fine. Not great, not terrible, just kind of in the middle, just fine. And Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles. I'm worried about Flanagan-Fowles having to play the mic. D. Winters could potentially be in a starting lineup if Fred doesn't go. Then you get Jalen Graham back. You got Tatum Bethune. So 49ers definitely have young linebackers that are going to have to step up if Fred is out, and that's a concern. And I think you look right down the middle of the defense, and Talanoa Hufanga, if he's not ready, you're going to have Malik Mustafa. And I like Malik. I think Malik is a guy that plays uncontrollable sometimes. I want him to bring that frenzy under control, and I worry about him making tackles in space against James Conner. I think down the road he'll be able to handle that, but I would love Talanoa Hufanga in this game. Plus, him and James Conner got a little something last year after a game, and it never got figured out because Hufanga got hurt against Tampa Bay and never played Arizona again. So that could be an interesting dynamic. But plus, we just want Huff out there. Huff is a special player. He's dominant. He'll help when it comes to run fits and tackling. He'll help when it comes to secondary coverage. So he's going to be a big part of this football game. But that matchup also what are we going to get from Charvarius Ward? Is he going to cover Marvin Harrison Jr.? Is he going to follow him around? Or are they going to allow him and Lenore to cover? Are they going to let Isaac Yedem cover him? I'm curious about what Coach Nick Sorensen does there. And then also Greg Dortch in the slot. That's one of the keys in this game. So, it's going to be a fun one. You're going to have some real cool player matchups. I think the 49ers like their matchups overall, but it comes down to who can stop the run and who can slow things up. Which defense can do that will probably have the best chance to win because both offenses have the ability to score a lot of points. I don't think the Arizona Cardinals team can stop the 49ers offense. And so I think the 49ers are going to score points in this game. The question is, can the 49ers defense stop them enough? Is going to be one of the keys in this football game. So I thank you guys all for joining me for this first look. It's a lot of fun to go through and kind of take a look at each team. And of course, we'll be having the Tell the Tape. We'll get deep into the numbers and talk about that this week. Game preview show as well. That'll be coming up. Madden Sim, don't miss those. All the film breakdowns, standalone shows over on Patreon. Go check those out. And please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're listening on audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe. Please give it a 5-star rating. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.